3 bone-chilling true horror stories to haunt your last days of summer forever. The summer air was thick with dread as the sky turned a bruised shade of purple. Mysterious whispers floated through the cigarette smoke clinging to the old diner, where locals gathered to swap tales of terror. They all knew. They all felt it rumbling beneath their skin, that gnawing knowledge that something unspeakable lurked nearby. As the clock struck midnight, the bell above the door told ominously, a sign that the witching hour had arrived. "You want to hear the worst story?" A voice croaked from the corner booth, casting a shiver through the crowd. The first tale slithered into the air like a shadow creeping up your spine. It was the story of Old Man Harris, whose odd behavior raised eyebrows long before the incident. He was that reclusive figure everyone avoided, mumbling to himself on the streets of Maplewood. Then, it happened. One fateful Sunday, he vanished. Days later, his house caught fire. People whispered about screams heard echoing in the night. No one was brave enough to investigate except for young Dylan. He had the curious itch that often led him into trouble. "They say he found something in those flames, something that wasn't meant to be uncovered," someone murmured, gasping as if they recalled the chilling sight of charred remains. Tension grew, every eye locked on the speaker, anticipating a graphic line about eyes wide with fear. Then came a second tale from a newcomer in town, a mysterious woman who moved into a ramshackle house, only to hear the pained cries of children at odd hours. Restless nights turned into frantic days as she plunged into a rabbit hole, unearthing long-forgotten secrets buried in the town's history. "It's haunted," someone dared to whisper. "Those are the echoes of lost boys who never came home." Before we continue, I need to give you an important heads-up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With each revelation, hearts raced and voices dropped to murmurs. The last story seeped into the scene like fog rolling in off the lake. A boy, small and unassuming, found a peculiar mirror deep in the woods behind his house. It shimmered with an otherworldly glow, pulling him in and driving his family to the brink of insanity. "They say it shows you your darkest fears," a listener shuddered, clenching their fists. Rumor had it that the boy disappeared, swallowed whole by the very thing he uncovered. As silence enveloped the diner, tension crackled in the air. People exchanged glances, fear etched across their faces. It was clear the night was far from over. The question hung ominously: what horrors lurked at the edges of Maplewood, waiting for someone else to find them? The air shifted, growing heavier as the clock chimed again, each toll resonating through the diner like a funeral bell. The bravado that had filled the room began to fade, replaced by unease and a desperate need for distraction. "You want another?" A voice called out, less certain now. That same croaking voice from the corner, shrouded in shadows like the stories it told. A different figure stirred at the counter, an elderly woman with a face lined like a map of sorrow. "I have a story I haven't told anyone in ages." Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with a fierce intensity that pulled everyone in closer. A hush fell as she began, her voice low and raspy. "It's about the old clock tower. The one that doesn't tick anymore." People shifted uneasily. Everyone knew the tower, the heartbeat of the town before it fell silent years ago. "They say the clock stopped the night of the storm that took lives," the woman continued. 5 children went missing that night. Their mothers' wails echoed into the darkness, unanswered. A collective gasp wafted through the diner, as if the memories themselves had rushed back to haunt them. She leaned closer, her voice a mere whisper. "They found the bodies eventually, but not until spring, when the river revealed its secrets. But there were whispers. Whispers of a figure dark and looming, watching from the shadows." The tension thickened, each listener feeling a cool draft, a chill running down their spines. It is said that on certain nights, if you listen close enough near the clock tower, you can hear the children's laughter followed by the sound of sobbing. They can't leave, you see. They're trapped. Suddenly, the bell above the door jingled again, startling everyone. A chill swept through the diner as a figure entered, drenched in the night's darkness and strangeness. The newcomer paused, eyes scanning the room with a knowing look that made the hairs on the back of every neck stand on end. "I heard someone talking about the clock tower," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. "You you don't know what you're playing with." The diner's light flickered, casting eerie shadows as whispers erupted among the diners. Fear gripped their hearts as they turned to face the man. Who was he? What did he know? The elderly woman fell silent, her eyes darting between the newcomer and the remaining patrons, searching for any signs of danger. He stepped forward, revealing gaunt features illuminated only by the flicker of overhead lights. "Those children aren't the only ones who got snagged by the tower," he warned, his gaze piercing. "You think the shadow just stalks the past? No, it craves souls. Yours could be next." A nervous laugh escaped from someone at the back, but it was shaky, nervous. The atmosphere was thick with fear, everyone holding their breath, waiting for the man to continue. "All it takes is one stormy night, one moment of weakness," he whispered ominously. Just then, the lights flickered wildly, plunging the room into near darkness. Screams erupted as chairs scraped back, panic setting in. "It's coming!" Someone yelled, pointing toward the window, where shadows seemed to dance in unnatural forms, echoing the old woman's story. With hearts pounding, they all turned back to the darkened figure by the door. "Find the truth before it finds you," he warned, a cruel smile carving his face, revealing too many teeth. "Or your laughter will join the rest." Before anyone could reply, he disappeared back into the night, leaving behind an unsettling quiet that felt even more terrifying than the chaos he instigated. But then another sound emerged, an echoing tick-tick-tick, a sound that drowned out their racing hearts and sent their blood running cold. What truth lay hidden in the clock tower, and would they discover it before it was too late? The diner's atmosphere was suffocating, thick with fear and unresolved dread. The echoing tick continued, relentless and eerie. A few patrons exchanged frightened glances, their faces pale under the flickering lights. The click of the clock morphed into a sinister chant, burrowing deep into their minds. Tick tick tick. What do we do? Someone finally broke the silence, their voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. It was a young man, jeans torn, eyes wide. Should we go? Get out of here? No. The elderly woman interjected, her voice rising above the anxious murmurs. We can't leave. Don't you see? If we do, we might be just like them. She gestured toward the window, her hands shaking violently. The children, they want us too. A surge of panic rippled through the diner as they all turned toward the window. Outside, the darkness was deepening, coiling around the corners of the street like a living thing. The wind howled, and something outside seemed to whisper back, a chilling harmonization with the clock's ticking. Is anyone else hearing that? Another voice chimed in, edging into hysteria. Aren't you hearing those voices? Stop it. A woman near the counter shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of the situation. It's just the wind, just the wind. But even as she spoke, another tick echoed louder, a sharp reminder of the shadows lurking so close. The young man staggered back, eyes darting around the room. We have to find out what is going on. Who is that guy? What does he mean about the clock? Souls? As if on cue, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into darkness for a breathless moment before flickering back to life. In that stark moment of blackness, a figure had shifted behind the counter, nearly undetectable. The crowd gasped, instinctively pulling back, eyes wide with shock. That it was the old man who used to run the diner, but he had been dead for years. His eyes were hollow, sunken deep into a ghostly face, skin pale and stretched tight. You shouldn't be talking about the clock. He rasped, his voice a mere whisper cutting through the air. It holds more than you know. Get away from him. The elderly woman cried out, her voice laced with fear. He's not alive. That's not him. Do you think the truth will save you? The clock needs you. He hissed, his tone rising dangerously as shadows wrapped around him, almost as if they were reaching out to coax him back into darkness. In that moment, time seemed to suspend, every heartbeat echoing loudly in the room. The tension coiled tighter, ready to snap. They could feel it in their bones, the impending danger creeping closer. Outside, the wind howled tighter, screams of long-lost children intertwined with its ferocity. Maybe, the young man whispered hoarsely, the resolve building inside him, maybe we can uncover the truth. Maybe that will save us. Or it'll bring death to our door, the elderly woman responded, her voice shaking. Those children were lost, but their echoes they still haunt the tower. There's always a price. Then we have to pay it. He shouted, igniting a fire within the crowd. They were driven by fear but also a flicker of hope, a yearning for answers, a fight against the suffocating whispers threatening to claim them. But just as they began to rally, a loud crash erupted outside, a blinding flash illuminating the diner as bodies jerked in shock. A storm had rolled in, fierce and unyielding, and amidst the chaos, a haunting laughter could be heard, ethereal and chilling. Did you hear that? A woman shrieked, her words barely escaping her lips. What was that? The wind howled louder, drowning out every other sound, and as it howled, the ticking of the clock quickened. What was it that the clock tower still held? Would their quest for truth unleash a terror unlike any they imagined? As the laughter echoed through the diner, panic erupted. What was that? Someone gasped, clutching their partner's arm as if their grip alone could anchor them to safety. The old man behind the counter smiled, an unsettling glimmer in his hollow eyes. He leaned closer, a whisper seeping into the collective dread. They're coming, you can hear them, can't you? The shadows around him pulsed, dark tendrils seeping towards the terrified patrons. The young man, emboldened by a horror he couldn't name, stepped forward, defiance in his stance. What do you want from us? His voice cracked but surged with hidden strength. The clock ticked louder, each beat a heartbeat, a countdown. The clock ticks for the souls of this town, the old man replied, his voice slithering through the air, weaving a spell of fear that gripped everyone. It wants your time. To escape, you must surrender what was never yours. But the children, another patron interjected, tears spilling down her cheeks. What happened to them? Why can't we just leave? As if on cue, a shadow flickered outside the window. The crowd pressed against the glass, hearts hammering in their chests. There, illuminated by the flashing storm, stood children, pale, ghostly images, their eyes black voids in their vacant faces, surrounded by a swirling fog. They reached out, fingers stretching toward the diner, their mouths moving silently as if chanting their despair. A shudder of horror swept through the crowd. They're calling us, someone whispered, disbelief mingling with fear. The elderly woman's face crumpled in grief. We can't let them in. They'll take us. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness once more. Cries of terror rose like smoke, and when the lights returned, the old man was gone, his voice replaced by the ravenous howling outside. Run! The young man yelled, his voice reaching a crescendo. The door rattled violently, and the shadows churned, pressing closer. But as they rushed for the exit, the clock chimed. Each toll reverberated like thunder, crashing into their ears. Tick tick tick. The door burst open, the wind howling like a banshee, pulling at their clothes and skin, a fierce force trying to drag them into the night. Just as the first wary soul crossed the threshold, a scream shattered the still air. Don't go! The voice shrieked from within. It's worse out there. A heavy silence filled the diner. The storm had muted the cries of the children, but the eyes of the patrons glistened with fear. The flickering lights cast elongated shadows across their faces, each look a mirror reflecting their despair, their choices, and inevitable fate. The young man halted mid-stride, a new realization dawning on him. No. This isn't right. We can't give in. He turned back, identifying the pulse of fear that coursed through them. We have to band together. We fight now, before it's too late. The truth is what will save us. But a voice echoed back, laced with sorrow and resignation. And what if the truth is worse than the darkness? What if knowing destroys us? His declaration hung in the air, heavy and laden with unspoken dread, but just as uncertainty began to creep into their ranks, another crash erupted from outside. Something had moved, something vast and disturbing. The storm roared back into life, a chaotic windstorm fueled by regret and sorrow. The children pressed forward, their mouths twisted in cries that carried the weight of untold tragedy, and with a shudder, the clock began to strike 12. Each chime seemed to flicker the world around them, revealing flashes of the horrors within and beyond. The final peal echoed through the diner, and for a moment, the world stood still. It felt like the air had vanished, like time had folded in on itself. Something shifted at the corner of the diner, a shadow darker than the rest, and the young man's heart raced. What was that lurking, waiting for the truth to unfold? As the clock's final tick resonated into silence, they found themselves at a crossroads. Would they take a step into the truth, or remain shackled in fear? And what terrible price would it exact? What waited for them just outside if they dared to face it? The air pulsed with tension. Instincts flared, urging them to flee, yet they remained, paralyzed by dread. The young man, bolstered by urgent bravery, scanned the frightened faces around him. Each individual there was a mirror of his own turmoil, a cocktail of fear, confusion, and the desire to escape. "Listen to me," he shouted, cutting through the chaos. "Whatever's out there, we can handle it together." A voice trembled from the back of the diner. "Together? Look where that's gotten us. We're trapped." A man, wild-eyed and trembling, pointed at the flickering lights as if they held the answer. "This place feeds on our fear. We should leave now." The storm intensified, wind howling like a monstrous beast, rattling the windows. Outside, the children moaned, their dark forms weaving in and out of the shadows. "It's a trick," someone cried, eyes wide with terror. "They want us to go out there so they can take us, just like the others." With every shout of warning, the atmosphere thickened. The clock's face mocked them, time slipping through their fingers like sand. The young man raised his hands, trying to calm the frenetic energy that sizzled in the air. "We can't let fear control us. The truth, whatever it is, might be the only way to save us." Another voice piped up, slick with hopelessness. "And what if knowing that truth will steal our last seconds?" Suddenly, without warning, the breaker flipped. Complete darkness enveloped the diner. Gasping breaths filled the void, punctuated by the battering of rain on the roof. An icy chill snaked up the young man's spine. Memories whispered in the dark, dredging up old fears he'd buried long ago. Each shadow corner of the diner felt alive, echoing with the haunted secrets of lost souls. A flicker, barely visible, illuminated a corner of the room. He turned slowly, his heart racing. There, against the wall, stood a figure shrouded in darkness, its form writhing like smoke. "Do you seek the truth?" It rasped, the voice like gravel rolling down a cliff. Who are you?" The young man's voice trembled, fear clawing at him. The figure drew closer, and the room shifted once more. "Just as the clock claims its toll, so must you confront what you've hidden from." The figure extended a hand that shimmered with an unearthly light. "Face the echoes of your past. Only then can you decide if truth or fear rules your heart." The room gasped like a single entity. The whispers of the forgotten children surged to the forefront, begging to be heard. His mind spun. What agonizing truths lay buried within him? The clock ticked again, but this time it felt like a death knell. Help them. A voice rang out. We need answers. Now. In the dim light, the shadows congealed, swirling around the patrons, threatening to entrap them. The air was thick with fear, unsettling, suffocating. The horrifying reality loomed before them. If they didn't confront the impending torment, they might suffer the same forgotten fate as the lost children outside. Feeling the echoes of despair pulling him close, he clutched the edge of the counter, heart pounding. God help us. We need to make a choice. What awaited them beyond the confines of fear? Would they unravel the dark tapestry woven from their secrets, or seal their fate by hiding in the shadows? Just as he thought the light might be within reach, an ominous howl erupted outside, drowning their hopes. What truth would they glean amid the chaos? As the young man gathered his breath, prepared to make the ultimate choice, the wind howled louder. What if the answers he sought were not what he wanted at all? Would truth dismantle him or set them all free? The figure loomed closer, a shadow against a backdrop of fear. The young man fought the instinct to back away, though every bone in his body screamed at him to run. The figure's voice was a rasp, threatening to peel the layers of his sanity. To confront your past means to unleash all that you have hidden. Are you prepared? The patrons shifted, breathing heavily, eyes darting among one another, torn between fight or flight. The older woman in the corner whispered a prayer, clutching her rosary like a lifeline. This can't be real, she murmured, disbelief mingling with despair. Don't let it take us, shouted the wild-eyed man, panic spilling from his lips. His hands trembled as they darted desperately, seeking any source of light. In that moment, the diner's loneliness became palpable, like a living organism fed by their fears. The whispers of the children swelled again, their frantic cries echoing through the storm. Help us, they wailed. We're still here. A cold sweat broke across the young man's forehead as he realized the truth of their plight. It was not merely a storm raging outside. They were trapped in a storm of memories, of regret, and hidden fears. Shadows writhed, curling around him like serpents as he felt the past clawing at the edges of his mind. What do you want from us? He finally shouted, anger cutting through the haze of fear enveloping him. The figure paused, tilting its head, a flicker of something almost resembling pity flickering in its inky form. I want you to face your past. You are not the first to be haunted by what you have done. But this time, it is not about saving yourselves, it's about saving those who never had a chance. Something in those words struck deep within him, igniting an ember of courage buried beneath years of regrets. Why did they deserve to be trapped here, suffering, when their chances had been stolen? Perhaps the lost souls outside were the very answers they needed, the key to their salvation. Let us do it, he called out to the other patrons, voice gaining strength. Let us confront whatever is tormenting us. Together. Silence fell for a split second before erupting into a cacophony of voices, all layered with hesitation and fear. But we don't know how. Someone cried. The truth didn't let us survive before another whispered. The dark figure smiled, if that's what one could call the curling of smoke that housed its face. Only by re-experiencing the moments you wish to forget can you cast off their chains. Each of you carries a fragment of this pain. You must share it, let it resonate among you. Only by facing your truth can you hope to save the lost. The shadows pulsed around them, shimmering, as if sensing a crack in their armor of despair. He felt the need to move, to act, before the moment slipped away from them. What did you lose? He whispered, turning toward the man who first shouted about fleeing. The man's eyes widened in surprise, and then flickered with an emotion the young man recognized: grief. My daughter, the man choked, she was taken. I didn't help her. I could have. His voice cracked, despair spilling forth. Others began to open up, each confession of loss awakening the shadows lurking within, releasing their haunting cries. It was raw, painful, and yet freeing, but as their truths poured out, the atmosphere grew even more charged, a dangerous energy thrumming in the air. The howling wind intensified, and suddenly, the walls of the diner trembled. The shadows of children outside seemed to twist together, forming a grotesque figure beyond the glass. "Run!" Someone screamed, just as the outside figure raised a chilling hand, signaling that time was running out. Swirling shadows and piercing screams enveloped them, chaos reignited. The young man felt his resolve crumble. Had they been wrong to confront their fears? Would it make things worse? Or would they indeed unlock the chance to save those children? He glanced back at the cloaked figure, which now stepped forward, and met his gaze. "It's time to find out. Embrace your truth, or be devoured by your fears." As the walls began to close in, reality blurred. The darkness surged, but the flicker of truth still beckoned like a dim light in an overwhelming void. What would they choose to face? Would they uncover the burden of their pasts, or would they be consumed by the shadows creeping closer? They teetered on the edge of a precipice. This was the moment to leap. But as the figure beckoned him forward, the young man hesitated. What awaited him on the other side of that darkness? Nothing could have prepared him for the truth waiting to be unearthed. The room twisted with anxiety as the shadows coiled around the patrons, squeezing tighter with every heartbeat. The shadows were not just a backdrop, they were alive, swirling with their shared grief, an echo of all that had been buried. The figure watched with an expectancy that sent chills down the young man's spine. "No more running," he blurted out, forcing his feet to take a step forward despite the cold, clammy sensation of fear gripping him. It was as if every inch of his body fought against the decision, yet some primal instinct urged him to confront what lay ahead. "Right!" shouted someone from the back, shaking the spell of silence. A woman with hollow cheeks and tired eyes rose to her feet. "I lost my brother in that accident. I wasn't there. I should have stopped him." Her confession triggered something. A wave of bravery swept through the diner, each lost soul nudging others to open up. I didn't mean to hurt him," shouted another man, the words bursting from him like a dam breaking. "After the divorce, I left him alone. I had no idea he was really suffering." Every confession slapped against the darkness, causing it to ripple and contract, pushing back against the weight of their admissions. For the first time, the palpable silence shattered and gave way to a chorus of pain and regret laid bare. But as their honesty filled the air, the entire diner trembled again. A bone-rattling sound echoed as the grotesque figure outside pressed further against the glass. "They can't save you," it declared in a guttural sneer, its fingers curling around the frame black and twisted, like skeletal hands yearning for life. "Resist it," the cloaked figure urged as the shadows pulsed with agitation. "Face your pain. Do not let it consume you." The young man's heart raced. The amalgamation of fears and regrets was a tidal wave threatening to drown them. "What if we can save them?" he yelled over the cries, directing his words at the figure. "What if we can change what happened?" The cloaked figure tilted its head, watching him with a strange mix of curiosity and caution. "Then you must risk everything." And with that, the urgency ignited within him, rekindling the fire of determination. It soared through the diner, igniting fervor among the other patrons. "What do we do?" a voice trembled from the back. "Share your story, your truth," he urged. "Let it bind us together. Together, we can push back this darkness." And so they began, with trembling breaths and wet cheeks. One after another, they bared their souls in raw, painful honesty, secrets spilling like blood on the floor. For each confession, the shadowy figure pressed harder against the glass, the weight of their pain cracking the darkness. But the pressure built within the diner, suffocating like they were caught in a vice grip. "Don't stop. Keep sharing," he cried out as the desperate cries of the children grew louder, merging with their pain. "Whatever it takes, we can't give in." The windows rattled as if threatening to shatter, and the shadows outside grew wilder, dancing violently. Lights flickered, and the temperature dropped, a surge of fear condensing around them. Look! Someone screamed. It's trying to break in. And then it happened. Just as the last confession left the lips of a strained-voiced woman, a haze of shadows ruptured, flowing inside like mist. The air grew thick and suffocating, and for a heartbeat, he couldn't tell where the dark ended and his reality began. A wave of terror crashed over him. His breath quickened as he fought against panic. They had tried, but was it enough? Was this night their undoing? But from the swirling chaos, he caught a glimpse of a small figure, a child, lost in the grasp of the shadows. Teetering on a precipice of fear, he strained to reach out. "You've got to fight!" he screamed, feeling both terror and hope bloom within. As the shadows surged forward, he felt that flicker of truth within ignite into an inferno. But would he be able to reach her, or would the darkness consume them all? Everything hinged on this moment. And as the air grew thicker, the cries finally broke free in unison, a piercing swell resounding against the darkness. "Help us!" And suddenly, a voice drowned them out, booming a ghostly whisper that demanded attention. But what if you learned the truth was never what you thought? What calamity awaited if they dared to uncover the reality that loomed behind the veil? What was hidden in the shadows, waiting to be revealed? The pulse of the diner thrummed like a frantic drum, each confession weaving a fragile tapestry of hope amidst despair. But as the shadows coiled, the air prickled with a tension that threatened to snap. Every heart beat louder, echoing the fear that gripped them. "Help us!" came the desperate wails, scattering echoes across the crowded room. The words hung like a weight, pressing down on every patron, amplifying the sense of urgency. The young man's mind raced. How could they face something so monstrous? Out of the swirling chaos, the figure at the window let out a low, sinister laugh, reverberating against the diner walls like thunder. "You think you can save her? Look at your own shadows. They're too deep." The words dripped with malice, each syllable tightening the noose around their courage. "Don't listen to it," the cloaked figure shouted, its voice cutting through the panic. "Remember the connections. Your strength lies in each other, your truths bond you." The young man felt the burn of anger rising. The sinister figure outside wanted them to falter, to let the darkness claim them. He turned to the others, raw emotion etched across his face. "Who's with me? We have to stand together. This is our moment." One by one, the patrons lifted their heads, determination igniting their eyes. The woman who had lost her brother stepped forward, her voice trembling but fierce. "I won't let it win. My brother deserves better than this." A wave of conviction washed over them. Every person began to shout their confessions louder, voices intertwining, drowning out the shadows' despair. "I was afraid. I let fear hold me hostage. I turned away." The energy sparked like fire among them, reviving hope with each shared sorrow, lifting them from the depths. The shadows pressed harder against the glass, but they were no longer overwhelming, they were just a force trying to pry them apart. Suddenly, reality shifted again. The darkness surged inside, and the small figure, the child, teetered precariously at the threshold, an embodiment of pure fear. Heart pounding, the young man felt drawn to her as if an invisible thread connected them. "Fight!" he yelled again, his heart racing with the weight of his plea. "You are not alone. We are with you." The child blinked, her eyes filled with confusion and dread. But then, in the storm of shadows, something flickered: recognition. A glimmer of hope broke through the murky veil. "Keep going. Don't stop." The cloaked figure encouraged, urgency lacing its tone. "It's the thread that binds you. Keep it strong." With revitalized strength, the crowd roared back, each confession surging like a tide crashing on dark shores. The shadows retreated slightly, the child reaching out, her small fingers brushing into the light emitted by their honesty, but all at once, the sinister laughter erupted again, cackling and wild, reverberating with an unrestrained fury. "You think you can change what has happened? You are nothing but ashes in the wind." The grotesque figure pressed closer, the glass distorting under the weight of their fear. Up close, the horror was tangible, eyes swirling endlessly, mouth stretching into grins that seemed to rip through the very fabric of reality. "Fight it!" the cloaked figure demanded, but doubt flickered in the young man's heart as the shadows began to wrap around them again, squeezing tighter than before. Would they bend and break, or would the light inside them be enough? As fear edged closer, he glanced around at the others, searching for reassurance, yet all he found was uncertainty mirrored back. The air thickened, each breath a battle, as the weight of secrets lay heavy upon them. Loss and regret surged like a swell, twisting tighter. Desperation clawed at him. Would they clear the darkness or be drowned in their own shadows? Just as despair threatened to swallow him whole, the child whispered, her small voice barely reaching beyond the noise, "What if the truth is worse than we thought?" In that heartbeat, a dreadful revelation loomed, leaving them on the precipice of unimaginable horror. What lay behind the veil of their truths, and could they handle what unfolded next? The moment hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The young man's breath caught in his throat as the child's words echoed, a haunting reminder that the monsters they faced weren't just outside. They lived within them too, wrapped up in their regrets and buried fears. "Stop," he shouted, voice cracking under the weight of truth. "We can't let it win. We can't," but before he could finish, the shadows lunged, spilling into the diner like an avalanche. The patrons staggered, some stumbling backward, their feet tangled in invisible chains of dread. The cloaked figure fought against the darkness, arms spread wide in defiance, but its resolve seemed to wane. "Let go!" someone cried out, but the words were lost in the cacophony of terror that engulfed the room. The laughter outside morphed into howls, drowning out the courage that had flickered so brightly only moments before. "Remember who you are," the cloaked figure shouted, even as the shadows wrapped tighter around them, snatching at determination like it was a fragile balloon. "Your truths are weapons. Use them. Don't let the darkness define you." The young man's heart pounded. Memories flooded back, times he'd run from pain, moments he'd chosen silence over truth. Each memory was a shadow, gnawing at him like rats at the foundations of a crumbling building. He turned to the woman who had lost her brother, whose fierce eyes now glimmered with fear and doubt. "Speak your truth," he urged. "Tell us what you're afraid of." She trembled and took a step forward, her voice shaking. "I never told him I loved him. I was too afraid he would think I was weak." With each word, a shudder rippled through the crowd. One by one, others began to speak, unveiling their fears like layers peeled from an onion. "I pushed my father away when he needed me," exclaimed a middle-aged man, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I abandoned my dreams for money." Another voice pierced the air, the shadows wavered, pain thrumming against them as their truths shattered the darkness. But with every admission, the sinister laughter roared louder, insisting that this battle was futile. "Errors, failures, who will stand for you?" the grotesque figure outside howled. "You are alone. You've always been alone." The young man stumbled, the truth biting hard at his soul. He felt the weight of it all, his own past decisions, the choices he'd made that led him here. Could they truly overcome this? Without thinking, he threw his head back and screamed, "We're not alone. We have each other. Look around. We're alive, we're fighting, and that's what matters." Suddenly, the child's small hand darted out, clutching his. Their eyes locked, a powerful connection spun between them. In her gaze, he caught a flicker of resolve. "Don't look away," she urged, her voice steadier now. "We can beat it together." The words hung in the air, adorned with a fragile hope. As if driven by an unseen force, the patrons responded. Together, they repeated the child's plea, voices melding into a resonant chant that seemed to shake the very walls. "Together. Together. We can face it." With every word, the shadows shrank. The laughter morphed into cries of desperation as the darkness begrudgingly receded. For a brief moment, light pierced the gloom, illuminating faces brave enough to fight, but the grotesque figure at the window seemed to writhe in anger, eyes narrowing as if calculating the next move. "Insolent fools!" It screeched, a sound that split the air. "You think you can sever the chains? I will show you the truth." Suddenly, with an otherworldly flick of its hand, the darkness surged, flooding back into the diner, more ferocious than before. The young man felt the ground beneath him tremble, a cold wind swirling through the room, carrying whispers fraught with malevolence. "Stay strong. Don't break," he cried out, but doubt crept back, like a thief in the night. As the shadows thickened, the young man realized that to face this monstrous entity, they might have to confront not just their fears but also the truths they had buried deep within. The air crackled with potential. And they hovered on the brink of revelation. Could they handle the truth that awaited them? What if it was more horrifying than anything they had ever imagined? The storm roared outside, the wind howling through the diner like a hungry beast eager to devour them all. The air was thick with electricity, charged with truth and horror. The grotesque figure pressed against the window, eyes like embers, watching, waiting. With each moment, the shadows crept closer, swirling like a vortex intent on swallowing them whole. "Stay together," the young man shouted, his voice rising above the cacophony of terror. "We can't let it separate us." But doubts clung to them like spiders weaving webs. The reality of their fears hung heavy, a weight they carried for too long. Would exposing their truths really save them? Would the walls they built to shield their pain help or endanger them now? "I never told my wife I was scared," a man cried, a sob breaking him. "I lost everything because I thought being strong meant hiding it." The shadows rippled in response, hungry for that pain, ready to capitalize. The young man breathed hard, the intensity of the moment crashing in on him. "Keep going," he urged, eyes darting around the gathered crowd. Each revelation wove a thread of light, pushing back the darkness inch by inch. "I was afraid to follow my dream. I buried it," a woman admitted, shaking. "And buried my happiness." The shadows quaked, recoiling slightly from the raw power of her words. "Yes," the cloaked figure urged, urging others to join in. "Your truths will shatter the grip of despair." More voices rose, each one a crack in the fortress of shadows. Each confession built a bridge, connecting them through shared pain, resilience blooming in the face of horror. "I wasn't there when my brother needed me." A man's voice broke through, despair coloring the air. "I let him spiral into darkness and I never even tried to catch him." The darkness hissed outside, the grotesque figure growled, but their cries resonated louder, like a wave crashing against a shore. Then, suddenly, silence erupted in the din. Every heart paused. The figure at the window laughed, a chilling sound that seemed to wrap around their throats. "You think that you can reach her? The truth will crush you." Dread settled like a thick fog, but the young man refused to let it paralyze them. "No. We can't give in," he shouted, glancing around as if to find strength in familiar faces. "We're not just fighting for ourselves. We fight for them." He pointed outside, where the children's ghostly forms writhed, desperately reaching out, their silent pleas palpable. One by one, they grasped at their interwoven truths. "I pushed my son away when he needed me. My guilt won't let me sleep at night." The winds howled louder, and suddenly, the child outside spoke, her voice rising above the chaos. "You have to remember us. We need your help." Their truths acted like a beacon, illuminating the path through shadows. "Together," the young man shouted, rallying hope from deep within. "We can do this. We must finish what we started." The energy surged again, newly ignited by shared grief and healing. "I was afraid of letting go," a voice cried, the pained admission making the shadows tremble. "But love exists in the truth. And I lost him for a lie." And with that, they launched into a chorus, each participant pouring their fear into the void. I wanted to help, but didn't know how. I let my fears keep me from being a friend. The children's figures twinkled beyond the glass, seeming to brighten with each release, smiles beginning to crack through their sorrow. Yes. The cloaked figure roared, arms raised high, spurring them into deeper vulnerability. The truth and love are the only forces powerful enough to ward off the darkness. With a loud crash, the figure outside lunged forward, desperate to snuff out their light. Your truth. It makes you weaker. It will lead you to ruin. But their resolve had grown fierce, filled with the warmth of connection. They pressed forward, voices rising to meet the onslaught of darkness. We are stronger together. They shouted in a wave, the sound reverberating like thunder. We will not be defined by fear. The shadows hesitated, giving way as their truths surged brighter and brighter, illuminating the room as if phoenix-like, rising from ashes. Then, with a final, defiant roar, they combined their statements, a cacophony of love and pain, fusing together into a powerful light. We are not afraid. We face our pasts to save each other. At once, a blinding light erupted, radiating warmth that consumed the shadows like fire. The grotesque figure at the window screamed, writhing, then evaporating into nothingness as laughter rose from the children outside, bright and joyous. They all gasped, the wave of clarity washing over them. The storm began to fade, clouds parting, light pouring in as the clock struck a final, reverberating chime. With an overwhelming sense of victory and release, the boundaries of the diner faded, and they knew the truth had saved them. They turned back to find the cloaked figure smiling. In facing the truth together, you've not just saved yourselves but offered peace to those who had been trapped. The last shadows receded, leaving only the sweet scent of fading storm, and laughter echoed through the diner, alive again. They were free. The haunting tales had ended, but the connections forged that night would linger, forever stitching the fabric of their lives. As sunlight flooded through the diner windows, the weight formerly crushing their hearts lifted. They stood together, a family forged in fear, truth, and newfound hope. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Your support matters.